John, Karl, and Mary Bruce live in Statuary Hall. Guys, we were watching it here on TV, as were millions of people across the country. But what was it like to be there at the center of the action?
Well, first of all, I want to point out there's no Rick Quake around here. Nothing is moving. I don't know what was going on there with Rick Klein. That was really strange. I've been inside the chamber I was trying to figure if I've been there for all of the President's State of the Union addresses, certainly almost all of them. And this one seemed far more subdued than any that I had seen. The applause lines were not as thunderous. There wasn't as much tension. Didn't have the same high moments. I think part of what was going on is the applause lines, as you often happen in these speeches, were, the president's party standing up to applaud. It was the Democrats standing up. And there are 80 fewer Democrats in that chamber now than there were when he first came in to give a State of the Union address. There are simply fewer of them. They're not as loud. And the president, of course, was much more philosophical in this speech. There was the fighter, there was the swagger, I would agree with this. There was a much more philosophical speech.
And also remember, a lot of Republicans were already blasting this speech before the president even finished delivering it. In fact, the Speaker of the House, one of them, he put out a statement saying that the president's speech was nothing more than lofty rhetoric and nostalgic platitudes. You heard a lot of Republicans over the last few days saying that this speech was going to be nothing more than politics as usual. In fact, I had one Republican lawmaker tell me yesterday that if you saw him standing clapping tonight, it was simply because he was applauding the fact that this was the president's last State of the Union.
And Mary, you also were talking before with the new Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, and he had said that the one thing he wanted from the president was an apology, and the president actually kind of had an apology line there. Were you surprised by that?
Yeah, I think Republicans had a lengthy wish list for this speech. I don't think they got most of what they wanted. In particular, looking for the president to outline a more comprehensive policy to combat ISIS. Certainly, I think Republicans are going to continue to hammer home that point in the coming days. That said, it certainly was a big moment for Paul Ryan to have his first State of the Union as Speaker of the House. He said it was a big honor, even though he was, of course, disappointed with this speech. And remember, even though the president outlined a lot of areas where he would like to see compromise, there is very little cause for optimism up here on Capitol Hill that there will be any of that kind of compromise coming down over the next year. We are now in the so-called silly season of the campaign, and certainly don't think that this speech changed any of that desire to see the both parties work together on some of these big issues.
But he did express some regret
yes.
for the fact that he was unable to overcome the partisan divide. That was the great hope of Barack Obama in 2008. That was the great hope when he gave his inaugural address in January of 2009. That didn't happen. This town, this country, this capital was very polarized when he came in, very polarized by the presidency of George W. Bush, but it is even more polarized as the president gets ready to leave office. He made an argument in the speech that I thought was a particularly tough sell for him to make, and that was on ISIS. And talking about, this president wants to tell you he's the guy who took out bin Laden. He will go after terrorists anywhere. He is tough. But he also believes, quite frankly, that people have overstated the threat from ISIS. And when he said in this speech that masses of fighters in the back of pickup trucks and twisted souls plotting in apartment garages pose a danger, but they don't threaten the United States, the existence of the United States. It's a bit of a straw man. People don't necessarily think they threaten the existence of the United States, but they do think they pose more of a threat than this president gives on.
That existential argument that he's made before, and it didn't seem to get a lot of American reaction at that time, and here he is making it again. And John, I have to say, it was so interesting with all the speeches that you've heard the president give that you thought that this was one of his most subdued. Do you think that it helps or hurts his possibility of having a Democratic successor?
Well, I don't think, frankly, it's going to have much of an impact. This speech, I think, will please those who are pleased with the president and are not going to change many minds. But I think that what you saw here was a clear indication that this president is going to be out there and campaigning. His last campaign has already been run, but they firmly believe in the White House that this president's legacy will depend on whether or not a Democrat is elected to replace him. And, mark my words, we will see this president campaigning as much as whoever wins that Democratic nomination. Right now, it's a little more in doubt than it seemed maybe a month or so ago. But he will be out there as much as whoever the Democratic nominee wants him to be out there.
And also remember, it's not just the Democrats and the president that are out here trying to frame the debate going into the next year, heading into the elections. Republicans are also trying to do the exact same thing. And you heard a lot of that in Nikki Haley's speech tonight as well. In fact, Speaker Ryan told us this morning when we met with him that he feels it's so important that Republicans now go on offense, that they're not simply responding to the president, responding to, as they put it, his efforts to bait them, that they get their message across as well. And I think you heard Nikki Haley trying to make strides towards that tonight as well.
Guys, I want to ask you more about Nikki Haley's response, but before we do that, look, I have never been in that room, and I'm always curious about this one thing. I know we asked Mary about this earlier as well, but look, the president's speech was not that long. What takes a long time is getting in and out of the chamber, and that is because of all those aisle hogs, as they are known. So I want to know, who's the most aggressive of those folks in terms of trying to get the autograph, trying to get the handshake, trying to get that last whisper into the president's ear? Who do you see in there?
Well, Sheila Jackson Lee, who I know Mary interviewed about this and takes this very seriously, Democratic congressman from Texas. As long as I've been covering this, she is about the first or second in the chamber, saving her seat. Eliot Engel, another Democrat of New York, also is one of the ones you always see there without fail. I kind of miss Dennis Kucinich. Remember Dennis Kucinich, who ran for president as well, former congressman from Ohio? He used to always be there. One thing that they did when they did the whole date night thing, and they said that Democrats and Republicans should sit on whatever side of the aisle and try to mix it up a little bit. There wasn't much mixing it up in this one, but when they started doing that a few years ago, suddenly the Democratic aisle hogs realized they could also hog the aisle on the Republican side as well.
Yes, it's a nice.
Yeah. But it's quite a phenomenon. You know, they tried to, Boehner tried to crack down on it by saying that you couldn't leave stuff in the seats. You couldn't go there and throw, like Sheila Jackson.
You needed a warm body.
Yeah, you needed a body. And that didn't stop them. They're still there.
And you did see Sheila Jackson Lee tonight. She told us some of her pointers. You know, wear a bright color. Tonight you saw her there in the bright red. Always bring a pen so the president can sign something. I think we even got a shot of her there holding out the program so the president could put his autograph on it. Yeah. And of course, you know, make sure to be there early or have someone else be there early for you. Yeah.
That's a different kind of legacy, I think a lot of those folks will have. But fascinating stuff. Listen, before you go, we want to get your take on the Republican response from Governor Nikki Haley tonight. A lot of people say this was her audition for a possible VP nod. What was your takeaway?
Well, look, part of the issue with the Republican response is just getting through it without having one of these embarrassing moments that we've seen in the past that so often becomes what people talk about. She certainly did that. She did the job that she was sent there to do. And a lot of people are saying maybe this was a bit of a dress rehearsal. You know, we'll have to wait and see on that one. But certainly she hit a lot of the right notes that the Republican Party was hoping that she would get across. She certainly is a rising star in the Republican Party, and I think you'll continue to see that star rise.
Look, this is the hardest speech in the world to give. I mean, you go after all that energy that's in the chamber and you're alone with a camera. The one thing she did, she didn't screw up. You know, she didn't do what Marco Rubio did and lean over and grab water in the middle of the speech. She didn't have this, you know, ridiculous staircase in the back like, you know, like Bobby Jindal had when he gave the response in 2009. You know, she managed to get through the speech. I think she'll get high marks. She had a very interesting message. She's got a great personal story. You know, the daughter of Indian immigrants. She spoke about immigration and the need for immigration reform, and had a line there that seemed to be aimed in a way at Donald Trump when she, you know, talked about how we need to secure our borders, absolutely, but we also need to find a way to allow legal immigration without regard for race or for religion.
That is ABC's John Karl and Mary Bruce joining us live from Washington, D.C. Guys, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.